My name is Afiq. I'm a financial advisory manager with Financial Alliance Islamic Wealth Advisory. I'm a chartered financial consultant and an associate estate planning practitioner. I've been in the industry for about 15 years now, and I founded something called Modern Muslim Finance. We focus on helping Muslims in Singapore as well as all around the world, and we empower them with education to be able to make sound financial decisions in their financial life. We cover things like insurance, we talk about investing, and of course Islamic inheritance. I even wrote a book on Islamic inheritance, and you can get a copy, and hopefully will guide you, especially when you want to plan your Islamic inheritance, inshallah. It's a common misconception that having a wasiat is just enough. But here's the thing, the biggest thing that a lot of Singaporeans think is, because there is Faraidh, I don't need to write a will, nor do I need to do any kind of estate planning, which is absolutely wrong. Because a wasiat, or an Islamic will in Singapore's context, is an administrative document. The courts want to know who's in charge when you pass away. Then after that, you can give away your assets according to Faraidh, the Islamic principles of inheritance. On top of which, when we think about things like your CPF, you think about your insurance, your will actually doesn't cover any of this. You have to have a plan to be able to think about what you have, who you want to give it to, when and how. A trust, in simple terms, is essentially an entity that owns your assets for you. You don't own it anymore. You can think of it as a box that you put all your assets in. It's not yours. You assign a trustee, somebody that you trust. It can even be an individual, it can be a company, to be able to manage the assets for you according to your wishes. You can say, give some of my money to my children, give it to charity. You can even say, hey, I want to set aside some for maybe debts I have in the future, even for myself. Later on, when I'm old and I cannot take care of myself, the trust can then feed me and give me income. So effectively, a trust is simply segregating your assets to the side so that it is protected from the probate process, which can be very, very long when we pass away. Absolutely. The biggest misconception when it comes to trusts and wasiat is that it goes against Faraidh. And people are so afraid of going against the principles of Faraidh because we know on the Day of Judgment as Muslims, when we pass away, Allah will ask us questions. And so can we structure a trust aligned to Islamic principles? Absolutely. When we set up the trust in the letter of wishes or the trust deed, I will then say, give according to Faraidh. For example, my wife, she gets 1/8. My son and my daughter have specific shares for them, and I can even say, if my parents are still alive at the point of my passing, give them this share that belongs to them according to Faraidh. So absolutely, a trust can complement Faraidh, it doesn't go against it. As long as you speak to a qualified professional and you understand what you want, they can help you draft and create the trust in a way that aligns with your values and principles as a Muslim. A trust can benefit a Muslim family in multiple situations. For example, if you have young children, did you know that in the Islamic inheritance law in Singapore, if you pass away with young children, their shares of your inheritance are given to their guardians. And yes, of course, we trust the guardian, but we also want the money to be accessible. We also want it to be managed well. What if the guardians are no longer around? If I put this money into a trust, I can instruct the trust to say, please give the money to my children, say for example every month, or even as a lump sum when they reach a certain age. The trust can be structured to help us with young children and take care of their inheritance even when we're gone. Another similar case would be children with special needs. I have met many families who have special needs children, and don't tell me they want to give the money to a special needs child. They cannot manage it themselves. And so who do we trust to manage this money for our kids with special needs? We set up a trust, appoint a trustee, even the guardian as well, to be able to administer to the trust and give the money in a very specific, measured way for the betterment of these special needs kids. And of course, we also think about people who have businesses. Businesses are complex entities. You've got private limited, you've got sole prop, you've got LLCs, etc., and it can be very complicated to manage all of these assets. Having a trust in place, I can put my assets into the trust and I instruct my executors, my administrators, my business partners, my trustee to my wishes, and then my business can then continue even when I'm gone. There are families out there who have children from previous marriages. Yes, we know this. We call them blended families. Situations like this can be very complex. I have a friend who I met. She had children from a previous marriage. She married another gentleman who had children from his previous marriage. And then they had children together. So there were his, hers, and theirs. And so in that kind of situation, we know from Faraidh, the distribution of assets only go to biological children, not stepchildren. And so if, say, for example, my friend passes away, her own children and their children together will get a share, but the stepchildren don't have a share. And so when I spoke to this couple, they wanted to say, hey, I want to give equally amongst all my children, my stepchildren, my own biological children. And of course, they wanted to be fair, and so they set up a trust with the correct instructions to be able to benefit all of them. And so complex family structures like this can absolutely be helped with a trust. In fact, these 4 scenarios are only the tip of the iceberg. There are many other scenarios that we can think of where a trust would absolutely help the individual or the family, especially with their inheritance, follow the Islamic way. When it comes to debt, Islam is very specific that we have to pay off our debts first before our beneficiaries can get our estate. And so in this particular case, when I set up a trust, my assets no longer belong to me. But technically, am I still in debt? Yes, I am. The trust is protected from creditors, protected from the probate process. Does not mean I cannot put into my trust deed to pay off any debts that I have at my point of passing. And so, for example, I can nominate my CPF, I can nominate my insurance into the trust, give instructions to the trust that say, if and when I pass away and I have outstanding debts, please use a portion of this money to pay off my debts, and then you can use the rest to distribute via Faraidh. The reason we have to do this is from an Islamic perspective that is very sensitive. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would not pray for a deceased individual when he found out that the individual had died with debts. And he would only pray for this individual after all his debts had been paid. Considering that a trust is actually separate from you and your beneficiaries receive the funds from the trust, by all means, please instruct your beneficiaries to use the funds from the trust to pay off any outstanding debts that you have, so that your debts are cleared at the point of your passing. Two of the most common misconceptions I hear. Number 1, trust only for the rich people. Number 2, trust, you want to cheat Faraidh, right? These 2 misconceptions are false. The first one, trusts are only for the super rich. In today's modern context, trusts are easily accessible, low-cost solutions where 20 years ago you would need millions of dollars to be able to start. But in today's context, you can start with as little as a few $100s a month to be able to fund your trust. And the second one, to cheat Faraidh, can, if you want to, then you structure your trust deed to say, I cheat Faraidh. But then when Allah questions you on the Day of Judgment, you better be afraid. Another way for us to look at trusts would be to create the trust deed in line with Faraidh, with specific shares to specific people when I pass away. So absolutely you can use a trust and structure it to be aligned to Faraidh and not to go against the Islamic rules and regulations. Essentially, there's 3 things to consider. Number 1, Faraidh. Number 2, your Wasiat. And number 3, the trust itself. First off, Faraidh is a set of rules that we must follow in terms of inheritance distribution. It spells out who gets what share from your estate when you pass away. Understanding that these are specific rules, we can then use this and put it into the trust as the instructions for the trust to follow. Complementing this together with the Wasiat. The Wasiat, or the Islamic will, you appoint the correct people, the executor, somebody who is capable, somebody who is trustworthy to be able to follow your wishes. On top of that, your Wasiat also enables you to give away up to 33% or 1/3 of your estate outside of Faraidh. So you can have things like charitable giving, you can create wakaf or charitable endowments for the long term. And then the trust will support all of this by having your assets segregated as well as a specific instruction on how to distribute based on Faraidh as well as your Wasiat. There was a family I was working with. They have young children, and their biggest concern was they have sizable assets which, when it would go to the children, would be paid to their guardians instead. And of course, we trust our guardians. The people we appoint, we trust them, but things can go wrong. But if the guardians are suddenly untrustworthy, or if they passed away before us, or they passed away at the same time, we don't know. And so for this particular family, they had created a trust and they had nominated the trust for their CPF, for their insurance, and they even funded the trust with some of their assets. They had informed the trust company that this is my letter of wishes, I want it to be given to my children in this specific way. They informed the guardian to also work together with the trust to be able to discharge their responsibility properly and according to their wishes. Now, this protects the family and the children from any kind of misdeeds or any unforeseen circumstances. It ensures that the children get their rightful inheritance, and it also ensures that the guardian can discharge their responsibility without worrying whether they're going against any particular laws or regulation. And so overall, the whole family had peace of mind by saying, hey, my assets are in the trust is working towards my desired outcomes, and I'm working with my guardians to be able to say, hey, take care of my kids in this particular way. On top of all of this planning, it also empowers their guardian to be able to pay off any outstanding debts that the couple may have left behind. They can also specify in the trust to give the guardian some allowance so that the guardian itself can be, hey, I'm compensated for my job of taking care of their children. And then, most of the money is then invested into a Shariah-compliant portfolio for long-term growth and income for the beneficiaries, in this case, the kids. The key to investing the funds for the long term is very simple. The kids will grow up, they'll need money, they need to go to university. And so the reason why we instruct the trust to invest that money in a Shariah-compliant way, so that when the children hit the age of uni, there is some money for them to be able to pay for their living expenses, for their education expenses as well. And the way the trust was structured is this. By the time the children hit a specific age, and they would be considered mature by their parents, maybe by 28, 29, 30 years old, the trust itself will mature and pay out the lump sum to the children so that they have a head start in life. This entire arrangement removed the burden from the guardian. And in fact, it helped the guardian because the guardian just needed to think about how to take care of the kids. The financial aspect of everything was taken care of by the trust. So the guardian just focused on raising the kids, giving them good welfare, and when the kids graduated from uni, the money will be there ready for them for a head start in life. If you've already got a Wasiat, great. If you're planning to write a Wasiat, even better. But if you're thinking about a trust, think of it in terms of how can I enhance my overall planning process. Wasiat, step 1, fantastic. After that, consider what assets you have and how you can segregate these assets so that if and when you pass away, the entire inheritance process is smooth. Because we know that even if you go to courts with a Wasiat or a will, it will take months. And if it's a complicated case, it might even take years. Having a trust segregating your assets away from your estate bypasses probate, and it makes things so much faster and smoother. Now, I've helped over 500 Muslim families with their Wasiat, with their estate planning. In fact, I even wrote books and courses on the topic. If you need help, let me know. Me and my team will be more than happy to have a consult with you, understand your desired outcomes, what are the challenges you're facing, and then we can propose the correct solutions so that you can plan your estate Islamically and smoothly. Great question! Which one comes first, wasiat or trust? Both can do at the same time. Because understand, a trust, when you create it, it is while you are still alive. It's a living trust. You do not create a trust when you pass away. And a wasiat, similarly, you cannot write a wasiat when you're gone. You need to write a wasiat when you're alive. The key here is to have a sit-down session with a qualified professional and plan your desired outcomes, and then do both at the same time. There is nothing wrong in planning your wasiat and planning a trust for your inheritance, for your guardians, for your beneficiaries when you're gone. Because by the time you're gone, it's too late.